friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Aubrey. I'm so happy to have you here with me today. So today we're going to do something a little bit different. I've mentioned this before in previous videos, but today we're going to talk about one of my favorite franchises of all time, which is Dragon Age. So Dragon Age is a multimedia franchise. Most people who are familiar with it are probably familiar with the video game series, but the world of Thetis, where the series takes place, does actually have a lot more to it in other forms of media. So I myself have played all 4 of the Dragon Age games that have released so far, starting with Origins all the way to the newest one, Dragon Age the Veilguard, which is the main focus of this video. We're going to essentially talk about Veilguard, what I thought about it, but we're also then at the end going to kind of go over the Dragon Age franchise as a whole and a little project that I'm planning to start to engage with one of my favorite fantasy worlds of all time in a more complete form. So we're going to start, as I said, with talking about Veilguard. So if you are not familiar with Dragon Age, there are 4 games in the series. We have Dragon Age Origins, Dragon Age 2, Dragon Age Inquisition, and then the most recent release, which came out at the end of last year, Dragon Age the Veilguard. Now, I am going to have both a spoiler-free and then a spoiler-filled section of this video. So we're going to start by just talking about the game as a whole, without spoiling anything in case you have not yet played Veilguard or if you haven't played Dragon Age at all. But then I am going to have a section where I talk about the specific, some specific parts of the game and specific events and characters and things that happen. So I will let you know when that's about to start and then let you know when you can come back in to the video and hear about my little project that I'm going to start. So, okay, so if you have not played Dragon Age, I just kind of want to give you an idea of what the franchise is about. Essentially, you're in this fantasy world that is very medieval inspired, and there are a number of different countries on the continent that all 4 of the games take place on, and these countries are all pretty inspired by real life cultures and real life places. So for example, we start out in Dragon Age Origins in Ferelden, which is very much inspired by like medieval England. We also have Orlais, which is like very, very French, but almost has like Italian Carnival to it too, with like the way that they dress. If you've played the games, you know what I mean. But Orlais is very, very French, very like sophisticated, very political, and like backstabbing in their like machinations. Very ornate. Then we have Antiva, which is very Italian inspired, I would say. Like the capital Minrathous seems to take inspiration from Venice, not Minrathous, that's in Tevinter. The capital Treviso in Antiva seems to take inspiration from Venice because there are a lot of canals that go through the city. No real roads, it's just places to walk and then canals. There is Tevinter, which is very Spanish, sort of. It's like very Latin, but also has a lot of, for example, like Tevinter is kind of reviled by a lot of the other countries because they allow slavery and they have a very, very specific caste system that exists. You have, Navarra, which I'm not sure, we haven't really seen a whole lot of Navarra yet. You get to see some more of it in Veilguard, so I don't want to talk too much about it because I feel like you learn more about it in Inquisition and in Veilguard. You have the Free Marches, you have also a bunch of different races. So you have humans, you have dwarves who mostly live underground in places like Orzammar, which is like mining underground, literally live in these huge, like, think like Moria in Lord of the Rings. You have, so humans, dwarves, you have elves who are pretty much considered either second-class citizens or like feral by a lot of the humans, unfortunately, because elves for a long time have been slaves in the Tevinter Imperium, which a long time ago kind of had taken over everywhere. So even now that they're kind of been confined just to their country, elves still are not treated very well by a lot of people. They often live in the slums when they live in human cities. Or they are what are known as Dalish, which are elves that travel around, very Native American inspired, I would say, who travel around, live kind of freely with the land, trying to get back to their original culture, which has been lost. And then you have the Kunari, who are very, very tall warrior race, most of whom follow something known as the Kun, which is kind of like a religious slash social order, I guess. So you have all of these different races inhabiting this land. You also have spirits and demons. You have magic. You have this thing that's known as the Blight, that it corrupts anything living that it affects, and it can transform living people, whether you're human, Kunari, elf, dwarf, doesn't matter, into things known as darkspawn, which are these like twisted, monstrous beings that just attack and they just kill, and the blight can spread. And there's only one group that can fight back against it, known as the Grey Wardens, and the Grey Wardens play a big part in the first game, Dragon Age Origins. And it's just, the games are so fun because they are an RPG, a role-playing game, where you get to make these different choices and define your character and create them, and your choices matter for the story. And you have so much like fun and funny parts in a number of the games, but you also have a lot of darkness, and you get to see not just your character but other characters. So much of the like villains in the franchise are really just people who are making terrible choices. Now, some of them are just awful, right? Some of them are just villainous in every shape or form, but some of them are really just people making bad choices, and it's just so great. And it's, you go on quests, you have like a main story that you're completing, but you have side quests. You can choose to help people, not help people, investigate things, find little like Easter eggs that the developers have put in the game for you. It's amazing. I cannot express to you the amount of love that I have for this franchise. And it has been created over a number of years, so if you've not played it and you go and play Origins, the graphics and the gameplay are much more primitive than they are in Inquisition. Not bad, but just like by the time you get to Inquisition is so beautifully done. And then Veilguard, after that, it's a wonderful franchise, and I highly, highly recommend it. If you, again, are not familiar with Dragon Age, it is a fantasy role-playing video game. So you can make a character, engage with the story, you can make different choices, and that's always been a big part of the Dragon Age games, is how they are very choice-based, in that the choices you make do have an impact on things that happen, the way other characters interact with the player character, the way the actual story goes. Different plot points can be affected by your choices. So that has always been a big part of the Dragon Age game, and it is part of that RP, that role-playing aspect to it. And Veilguard, the newest game, does start off right when, well, not right when, it does continue directly from Inquisition and the DLC, or downloadable content, if you're not familiar. I will try to like define these little acronyms and terms if you are not very familiar with video game vernacular, so that you know what it is that I'm talking about. So there is a part of Inquisition, which is the third game in the series, called Trespasser. And it's like a downloadable part that you can include with yours. You can get like the complete edition, Game of the Year edition, whatever, and have it included. And what happens in Trespasser directly leads into the events of Veilguard. Now, There has been an astronomical wait for this game. People have been waiting, myself included, for years. Dragon Age Inquisition came out, I believe it was 2016. I could be wrong about that. It may be a little earlier. I know that I got it. No, it might be 2014. Inquisition came out. And since then, we have been waiting for Veilguard to release. And there has been a lot of controversy with the way that the studio was handling the game. And I'm bringing this up because I do think that it has affected some people's opinions of the game, and that is one thing that I want to address in this video. And so it has been a very, very, very long wait for Veilguard. There were a lot of things that happened where they were going to try to make it an MMORPG, which is a massive multi-online role-playing game. It stands for something like that. Essentially where you play online with a bunch of other people, kind of like World of Warcraft and games of that nature. Which was pretty instantly an idea that was pretty instantly put down by the fans of the series. So then they went back to their original plan, which is to just continue in the vein of the first 3 games and make it a single role-playing game, which I think everyone was happy about. So again, I'm just bringing this up because I do think that this wait and these, controversial kind of decisions that were being made in the process of the game creation have had an effect on people's opinions of Veilguard. So now that you kind of have a general sort of background about the development of this game, let's kind of talk about what did I think about it. I really liked Veilguard. I thought that the companion characters were very engaging. I thought that a lot of the NPCs or non-playable characters who you interact with and meet were very interesting. Their personalities, their stories. I did learn that a number of these characters you can actually meet in some of the other Dragon Age media, like some of the novels and comics, which I myself have not read. So I kind of regret not reading those before Veilguard came out, but alas, that's how things turned out. But I thought that their personalities were really interesting. I thought that the graphics were beautiful. Now, I have heard a number of people complaining, unfortunately, that they thought that the graphics should have been more realistic, and instead they were a bit more stylized. However, personally, I don't think that there was much of a change between the graphics in Inquisition and the ones in Veilguard as far as stylistic choices. I did see in the Veilguard art book, they did talk about some of the, like making things a bit more pronounced and giving them a bit more character. Like if you're having a crate, for example, instead of just making it a perfectly cuboid crate, giving like it a little bit of a tilt, some slant, making it not perfectly square on one of the sides, things like that. And I honestly didn't have a problem with it. I didn't find the graphics at all cartoonish. I didn't find them at all to be at all jarring or to pull me out of the immersion of the game. I actually thought they were quite beautiful. But again, this is all just my personal opinion, so I'm not trying to say that other people are wrong. I'm just kind of talking about my opinion of the game and how it maybe is the same or differs from kind of others that I have seen discussing it on the internet. And I have seen other people who also liked the graphics, also thought it was beautiful, so, there is that. So I personally thought that they were very pretty. I really think that the story I've seen... Okay, let me just kind of go back to talking about the graphics and the locations. The one issue that I had as far as the locations, actually I guess there are 2. The first one is that I think that there was so much emphasis on having you be able to go like multi-level, like being able to go on rooftops and stuff in Minrathous, in Docktown, which 100% makes sense because this is a city. And based on where you were able to go, it looks like the city is very tiered. It has a lot of different levels to it. And so the areas that you are able to go, it makes a lot of sense that you have a lot of zip lines, a lot of ladders and construction like beams and scaffolding and things that you were then able to get to the roofs, get to other levels, that sort of thing. The same in Treviso, where you go, another city, which is loosely based off of, I think, Venice. It has a lot of canals, so there are a lot of zip lines, again, because you are trying to get from one area to another. Without having to swim or take a boat. So a lot of zip lines available. And I think that those things made sense. But I feel like in certain areas, such as in Arlathan, I don't think that, unless we are assuming that the Veil Jumpers, which is a group in Arlathan, so Arlathan Forest is an area where there used to be an ancient civilization. I'm not going to get into details because, again, spoilers, that has since become ruins. And I don't think that that ancient civilization would have relied on zip lines. So unless we're assuming that the Veil Jumpers, which is a group that is investigating Arlathan, installed these zip lines to make it easier for them to get around, I just feel like some of the mechanics I wish had been different based on the location you were in. Because I feel like it was almost like we're trying to really emphasize this ability to explore these ruins, get up to higher levels, get across to other locations where bridges have collapsed and things of that nature. But I feel like reusing the same system between multiple countries and multiple locations that are very different from one another almost took away from that individuality that these places actually have, if that makes sense. The second issue that I had is just a personal preference thing based on Inquisition. So when we look at Dragon Age Origins, which is the first game in the series, it is a very closed world game, meaning that you can choose in certain areas where you go and what you do and what path you take, but you have to stay on a path. The only places that you kind of have free reign to go wherever you want are when you're in a town or a city, because of course, you know, you can move around the different buildings, go in the houses, walk through the square, but when you're out in the wilderness, you are stuck kind of on the paths and roads where you need to go. Dragon Age 2 is the exact same format. Then we get to Dragon Age Inquisition, and Dragon Age Inquisition is very, very open world. This is a limited open world. You don't just have constant access to everywhere. You can't travel between different locations. But in each location on the map, you have free reign to do whatever you want. There's a big cliff that you're technically not supposed to go up. You can try to find a way to go up it. You can go running through the wilderness and never step foot on a road. You can do whatever you want. It is completely open world within the limitations of those locations, and some of those locations are huge. Hinterlands, I'm looking at you. If you've played Inquisition, you understand. The hinterlands are something else. So it is this like very, very massive sort of feeling every time you go to a new location. There's so much to explore, so many Easter eggs to find, so many things that you can find that you don't have to engage with to complete the game. There's so many side quests, which Dragon Age, even in the first two, also had those things. There were a number of side quests and a number of things that you can do and find and interact with that you don't have to do to complete the game. And stuff like that, to me, makes the world seem much more immersive, much more realistic. But we're talking about the openness of it right now. The open world aspect of Inquisition, I think, really had an impact on how long players can spend playing, what all they can do, the ability to feel like you don't have to necessarily just go from quest to quest to quest. You can spend hours just wandering around and finding things and listening to your companions banter as they follow you around, and it's great. Veilguard is still, to an extent, open, like limited open world, so open world within those different locations, because again, you can't travel between them. Well, you kind of can, but it's not, you can't like just walk from one to another. You have to go to a secondary location to be transported there. Anyway, that's not the point. If you can't tell, this video is going to be kind of rambly, and I'm sorry. The point is, it is still technically limited open world, but on a much lesser scale than Inquisition is. And I understand that a lot of the locations you go to are either specific, like estates or buildings or a town, which by nature is not as open world as a forest, right? Because in a town, you kind of are restricted to where the pathways are. You can't go everywhere because there are buildings in your way. However, locations like, for example, Arlathan Forest, I know that the focus was on the ruins of this ancient civilization, but you are still running around the forest, and in a lot of cases, you were confined then to a certain path to get you from one section of the forest to another. And then you might have an area that's much more open, but it felt like kind of a step back from Inquisition, and I feel like that was a little bit hurtful for the game. Now, I do want to say, I am going to talk later in the video about why I think some of these, they're not really complaints because I enjoyed the game, but why I think some of these less, I think, fleshed out or completed aspects came about. I am going to talk about that, so we'll get into that in a little while. But that I think was kind of a step back from Inquisition because Inquisition was such a massive world. For example, Inquisition, you can get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of playtime because there is so much for you to explore. And if you're a completionist like me and you want to find all the codex entries, do all of the side quests, explore every inch of territory so that you can try to find all of the little like Easter eggs and interesting locations and things, and you want to make sure you see everything, you can put in so much playtime in Inquisition. Veilguard is a fraction of that. Not because story-wise, I think story-wise they're probably about the same, but just because there's so much less extra for you to do. Not that there's not any. There are still a number of side quests you can do. There are still a number of people that you can talk to, a number of interesting codex entries that you can find, but I feel like overall it was definitely reduced as far as the scope of the world that you were interacting with.
All right, I'm just going to interject here with one more comment also. Say hi, Racket. Say hi. I've also seen a number of people talking about how they're disappointed in the portrayal of Tevinter and how it is not as ruthless and bloodthirsty and political as it has been shown to be in all of the other games, especially in Inquisition, talking with Dorian and learning about it. And I just want to say that I think the reason that is because of this lesser scope to the world in Veilguard. The only part of Tevinter that we really get to explore is Docktown, which is naturally less political because it is mostly made up of people in that lower caste, not quite to the level of slaves, but in a lower caste where they are just kind of trying to survive and trying to live. And we don't actually have a lot of mages who are living in this area. And I just wanted to point that out as vaguely as I can without spoiling anything, that I think that complaint about Tevinter is because we are only seeing a very small part of Menrathis, so the capital or of the country as a whole.
So unfortunately, that was something that I found a little disappointing because Inquisition for me was such a perfect game. You also do have less side quests, simply because I think you don't have as many places to go and as many people to talk to and as many like little things to find to then do. And again, we're going to talk about why I think that is later. So, I did think that the graphics were beautiful. I thought the locations were gorgeous. As always, I think they put a lot of time and effort into making them feel like a real place. And the NPCs, some of which you could talk to, some of which you can't, even the ones that you can't interact with, you really, as you're walking around, you can hear them talking to each other in certain locations. And there are some NPCs who will have continuations to their previous conversations. When you go back to that area at a different part of the game, they'll have something else to say that calls back to things that they've said in the past. So you get these little glimpses into these characters' lives that I think really makes the game makes the world feel more real. And I think that they continued to do that in Veilguard as well, and they did a very good job with that. So I had no problem with the graphics, with the way that these locations looked. My only issue was I feel like we had less of an open world than we did in Inquisition, which just felt like kind of taking a step back with the design of the game. Okay. Now let's talk about companion characters. So in every Dragon Age game, one of the biggest parts of the game is the relationships you can form with your companions. You pick up people from different walks of lives, or different walks of life. I'm sorry if I'm tongue-tied, stuttering. I apologize. It's just one of those days. So you can pick up all these different companions who can then help you bring different abilities, different opinions, different personalities into your party to assist you. And you can take your companions with you when you are going on quests, when you're wandering around, when you're exploring the world, and they will help you fight. They will help you, some of them you do quests that they're required for because of different skills or different relationships that they have. So you also, however, in Dragon Age, one of the things that makes it, because that's a pretty standard that's a pretty standard aspect of an RPG game. But one of the things I think that makes Dragon Age really great is that these party members, these companion characters, you can really form relationships between them and the player character, so your character who you've created. You have different dialogue options when you talk to people that can help define your character's personality, and they affect the way that your companion characters respond to you or interact with you. They have like approval, so different things that you do and different choices that you make when your companion characters are with you are going to affect what they think of your character based on the choices you make and based on their personalities and their beliefs and their morals, their alliances, where they come from, who they care about, that sort of thing. So that is definitely still a part of Veilguard, and I really liked the companion characters. I think that they had really interesting personalities. I think that they really had... They were really fun. I really liked them. I think Lucanus and Emmerich were probably my favorite, although Asan is a baby. I'm not going to go into specifics about the characters in this part. We'll talk about them in the spoiler section. But I do think that the characters were very engaging. I did find myself caring about them, as I do with all of the companion characters in the Dragon Age games. However, where I think that it fell a little flat is that you can't interact with your companion characters as much, again, as you could in Inquisition. So when you're talking to your companion characters and you're trying to form these relationships, you can do it in a couple of different ways. As I said, bring them with you on quests. Making choices that they approve of or disapprove of is going to affect their opinion of your character. But you can also speak with them, ask them questions, talk to them, help them with their problems, learn about them. And you can also go on companion quests. So your companion characters might have problems that they need your character's help with. They might have things that they're trying to resolve in their own lives, issues that they're having, things that come up that they need assistance with, and you can help them with those things to then affect your relationship with them. Where I think, like I said, Veilguard fell flat is that in Inquisition, you were able to go and talk to your companion characters at any point in the game when you are at your base. So you can go to their room, the location where they hang out, and you can have conversations with them. And there were a lot of different dialogue options to learn about them, their culture, their beliefs, where they come from. And as you learn about them and as you complete their companion quests and learn more about them and their lives, you then unlock more dialogue options that will help you. Unfortunately, in Veilguard, that was kind of not present. You did have a number of conversations with them, but it was only when they needed something. It wasn't just that you could go and talk to them and ask them questions and learn about them. And I feel like the game suffered a little bit for that because, again, I feel like the companion relationships in Dragon Age is one of the things that really engages players and makes them really love the game. And again, I really thought the character designs were awesome. I thought that their personalities were really interesting and really fun. I thought that they were very engaging. I really did care about them, and I cared about their stories and their problems. I think they really went in some interesting directions with these characters. But I do feel like it suffered for that lack of ability to talk to them and to learn about them. Um, Additionally, the romance. So that has always been another big part of Dragon Age. Your companion characters are often romanceable. Not all of them, and not all of them are romanceable for every gender. But there are always options of character or companion characters that you can choose to romance with your character. Um, Pursuing that romance requires you to like work on their approval, to choose dialogue options that flirt with them, to help them with their companion quests, things of that nature. Um, and Veilguard is no exception. I personally did the Lucanus romance because I really like Lucanus. And I thought that his character was very sweet. It was a very sweet little romance. However, again, I feel like there wasn't enough of it. So it felt almost like, and I've looked up things about romances with other characters, and it has very similar issue with all of the romanceable, the romance options, is that in Veilguard, you can't complete your romance, get to the complete point until right before the end of the game. And it's like you can enter into a romance before that, but you can't reach the conclusion of the romance until, not like the conclusion as in it ends, but like coming completely to fruition, until right before the end. And that's really frustrating because, again, going back to Inquisition, the romance is dependent upon their companion quests in a big way. You can't really commit to a romance. Same in Veilguard. Same in pretty much all of them. You can't really commit to a romance until you have completed their companion arc. But once you do, like in Inquisition, you then can commit to that romance, and then you are in a romance with that character until the end of the game, unless you break it off. So you can go visit them. They will talk to your character differently. There will be a lot of dialogue between them and other companions when you're taking them places where they will talk about your relationship. And Veilguard did have that too. There was some very cute dialogue, companion banter about the romance, which I thought was really cute. But you are in that romance for the rest of the game. And so if you take your romanced companion with you on quests, they will react certain ways. If your character is then in danger or different things are going on, they will have different things, like different dialogue options with your character going forward when you go to talk to them because you are in a romantic relationship with them. And it's just really fun, right? Because you see that dynamic that you have created between those two characters actually affecting the game and the way that they interact with each other. Veilguard, unfortunately, didn't really have that until the end. You did, once you committed to the relationship, have that, like I said, companion banter about it, but you couldn't really do anything about the relationship. You couldn't talk to them, you couldn't have any romantic encounters with them, nothing like that until the end, which was really frustrating. And I do think that unfortunately did cause a number of people to have issue with the game. Now, I feel like what I've said so far, it sounds awfully negative, but I did really, really like the game. I found the plot super engaging. It was surprising. There were a lot of things that you learn about the world that some of them have kind of been tossed about as fan theories for years now. There were a lot of things that have been hinted at that have now come into fruition, and you've really learned about. I think that the callbacks to other characters from previous games was really fun. The choices that you have to make can be very difficult and really have an impact on the story as a whole in the world of Thedas in your world state, just like in the previous games. I think that the game was really good. I really enjoyed it. Every time I sat down to play it, I was excited and looking forward to it because I wanted to see what happened next. Um, I did have some issues with the combat mechanics simply because in previous games your companions could also take health, like take damage. In this one, I don't know if maybe it was my setting because I had it on like the kind of normal setting. I don't typically play on like really hard combat focused settings, which Veilguard does have. So I wonder if it would have been different had I been on a different setting. But at least in the sort of normal setting where you're focused more on the gameplay with normal combat, my companions didn't take damage, so the enemies would always target my character, which was so frustrating. At least I spent so much more time dodging than I should have because the focus of these enemies should have been split between me and my two companions, and it was constantly on my character. So that was really annoying, and I'm really not sure where that choice came from. That should not be a thing. Because it also is fun, frustrating, but fun, when your companion characters get knocked unconscious and you have to try to run over there and heal them so that they can get up and help you. I think that makes the combat both more and less challenging. More challenging because you're freaking out as like suddenly you're the last one left standing. Less challenging because they're not constantly just focused on your character. But anyway, so I don't know where that choice in the game design came from, but that was irritating. But you get used to it. You figure out how to work with it using buffs and stuff. It's fine. But anyway, so I do have an overall very positive opinion of the game. I really, really, really enjoyed it. I thought the story was great. So where do I think, like, why do I think the few issues that I had came to be a part of the game? The biggest thing that I think that happened is because of that switch I mentioned earlier where they went from an MMORPG back to just a regular RPG. And I think that unfortunately parts of the game were then compressed or rushed, meaning that they didn't have enough time because at that point it had already been so long. There was a lot of unfortunately negative pushing from the fans in the community, not all of them, but some members of the community, about how long the game was taking. Like, was it frustrating as a fan? Of course it was. But, you know, you want to give creators the time that they need to do their thing. But I think that unfortunately at that point it had gone on so long that they tried to cut a few corners to be able to get the game out before too much more time had elapsed. And I think that is where the root of the issues stems from. Is just that they didn't have as much time developing the current version of the game to really get all of the open world that Inquisition had, all of the many, many hours of explorable content, and all of the many, many side quests, and all of the companion interactions and romance interactions that they could have and probably wanted to. And that just comes down to a matter of time, which is very unfortunate. But again, I do still think that the game is really, really, really good. I really enjoyed it. I thought that the mechanic of having these different factions that you are trying to drum up support for so that they can in turn support your character in your mission was really cool. I think that again, it was fun to interact with different characters, both the companions and NPCs. There were a lot that I found very interesting and engaging. I think that the enemies were interesting because, again, I'm trying to say these things without spoiling anything, because you learn a lot. A lot of things are developing in the world that have been kind of building up since the first game. And it also still has those elements to Dragon Age games that I have always loved, where it has, like I said, that importance of choice, where it has the darker elements, because in the world of Dragon Age there is a thing called the Blight that is absolutely horrifying and disgusting, and it's terrifying. So that was still, that darker element to the world and to the games was still definitely present. And some of the locations you go to are scary. Some of them are beautiful. Some of the enemies you fight are absolutely terrifying. And then, some of them are pretty standard fare once you get to the fourth game in a series. So I think that it was a really, really good fit as far as the story, the design, everything goes, if it had just had more time focused on building this particular aspect, or this particular version of the game, to get it more onto the level of Inquisition. Now, I will say, as I mentioned earlier, there has been some negative feedback from some people in the community. However, this is not a new thing for Dragon Age. For some reason, people, every time a new Dragon Age comes out, people find things to hate about it. People who claim to be fans. And not all of them. There have been a lot of people who really, really enjoyed Veilguard, and I think that that's wonderful. But there have been a number of people who have had complaints, who have had, just like very negative things to say about it, and it almost feels like they're looking for bad things to say. Now, I will say one complaint that I've seen over and over again is that a lot of the concept from the art book, so concept art, ideas that were scrapped before the final version, they were like, well, why didn't you go in this direction? Why didn't you go with this? But honestly, guys, it's like that with every video game. If you look at any art book for a video game and they actually do you the courtesy of including the concept stuff, not just concept art for characters, but concepts where they talk. So in the Veilguard art book, they talk about the 3 stages of development, not including the MMORPG, where they talk about initial ideas right after Inquisition and also when they were working on Inquisition. Then we have kind of the second stage of ideas, and then we have which was kind of when they were first really building the game, and then we have the final sort of like once they got into a final version, what they did there. And so if an art book or any kind of video game production company gives you that initial idea stage and they give you those concepts, I guarantee you there's going to be a lot of stuff that you would look at it and be like, oh, that's so neat, that's so cool, why didn't you do that? For any game, not just any Dragon Age game, but any game ever, because stuff changes from start to finish. Talk to any creator of, any like author, any director or producer of a movie or designer of an animated TV show or anything, and they're going to tell you stuff changes from beginning to end. You end up going in a different direction. You end up, just not being able to do everything that you thought you would. You end up realizing that the version that you had in mind here just isn't going to work. Or maybe for example, in Veilguard, one of their original sort of ideas was that it would be more of a like spy type game with your main character, who is called Rook. You can name him, but if you've played Dragon Age, all of the player characters get a sort of title or nickname. So in Veilguard, it's Rook. Your Rook was going to kind of like be infiltrating and traveling around in secret and, making deals and double crossing different organizations and stuff. And honestly, while that sounds cool in theory, it just doesn't feel right for Dragon Age to me, because I think that it does take away some of that element of like direct combat and these darker parts of the game, combating the Blight. I think it also was painting Rook kind of in a more negative light, like one of those people who just will do anything to get the job done. And again, this was just concept, so I don't know how it would have ended in a final version of that game, but it's always been important to me in these games to be able to choose how your character reacts to things and what they're willing to do and not willing to do. So I don't know. Again, this is all just my opinion. But my point is that you can make those complaints about scrapped concepts for any game. If you look at Inquisition, which has had a lot of success, in my, as far as I'm aware, there was a lot of stuff that they didn't use, a lot of stuff that they didn't end up putting into the game, things that they changed, things that they took out. You can like do data mining, which I am not, I'm not a person who does that. I have no idea how, but I do watch, like look at people talking about this where they have gone into like the files and seen things that didn't actually make it into the final game and tried to theorize, is this stuff still relevant to the world? Is it going to come into play later? Has it been scrapped for good? That sort of thing. So there are always those concepts that don't make it into the final version. Always. So I think that that's a silly thing to complain about. Silly reason to dislike the game. I thought it was a really great game. I just think that it suffered from lack of time to work on this version, the version that we got. So, that being said, I want to just talk about a few things that I really, really loved from this game, which are going to be spoilery. So what I'm going to do is in the description, and also down below, I'm going to put a timestamp for where you need to go to avoid spoiler content. If you are someone who has not played any Dragon Age game or Veilguard, you need to skip this, okay? Now, I will say, I do not recommend playing Veilguard or any Dragon Age game out of order. I highly recommend, obviously you don't have to listen to me, I'm just a person on the internet, you can do what you want, but I highly recommend you start with Origins and go from there, because Dragon Age is one of those series that the storyline, things that happen in Game 1 are going to lead to things in Game 4. Seriously. You will not have it all the same experience if you start later in the series. I highly recommend you start earlier. Now, yes, you will have to deal with the much older graphics and much older game style and whatnot. But seriously, start with Origins and work your way from there. So if you have not played Veilguard, or if you have not played any Dragon Age game at all, timestamp will be here right now. Go ahead and skip over there. Okay, for those of you who have stuck with me, I just want to go over a couple of things that I thought were really cool to be included in this game. First of all, the lore we got about the ancient elves and their deities, the elven gods, I thought was so interesting. There has apparently been a fan theory for a while that the ancient elves, did originally come from spirits who were able to, in some way, somehow form their own bodies. And we have actually gotten confirmation of that, which is so cool that that has been hinted at, and now you get to see the truth of it. I thought that that was really, really cool. For a couple of reasons. First, because it really gives us insight into, for example, Solus's character, his interactions with Cole, with other spirits in Inquisition. We also get to really see it also has so many implications for spirits and the Fade, right? Because in Origins, the most that you learn about spirits is that they can become corrupted and become demons, and then are basically considered evil. But as the games go, you just learn so much more about them, and it's just confirming so many headcanons and things that I had about their sentience and about their individuality and their ability to actually the way that they are actually a person, which I mean I know we get a lot of with Cole in Inquisition, but still it's so cool. We also learn a bit more about the Titans, which a lot of the stuff we learn about the Titans is still very vague, so I feel like that is setting up to learn more going forward. We have learned what happened to them, but a lot of the ancient dwarven culture and dwarven history is still really unformed in the story. So I think that we are starting to get a lot more hints with things that were going on with Harding in this game, which I think is very reminiscent of how we were getting a lot of hints with the spirits and the ancient elves, and now we're starting to get that with the dwarves and the Titans, so I do think that that's going to play a part going forward. I also thought the thing about the what are they called? The ones across the sea. The oh gosh, I can't remember what they're called. I'm going to put the name down here. Now I really can't remember what they're called. I'm so sorry. I thought that was super interesting. Those little tidbits you get throughout the game. If you have not finished the game, you're not going to know what I'm talking about, and you should have skipped this. But if you have finished the game and you didn't get a cutscene at the end, You didn't find the 3 pieces of the circle and interact with the mysterious voice. You need to replay your game and do that, or at least look up those cutscenes with the mysterious circle and then the extra ending that you get, because it really heavily implies, because I know that unfortunately some people are like, oh, I don't think there's going to be a new Dragon Age game, but this implies that they're at least planning for there to be a new game. There better be. I need more. I need to know who these people are. I need to know what they had to do with stuff that's gone on from game 1, like with for example in Dragon Age 2 with Bartrand and with Loghain, like, and Corypheus. I need to know who they are. I need to know if they were actually playing a part in those things and manipulating those people, or if they were just aware of it and were like, are using it to their advantage, or if they were opposing those things and trying to like manipulate the player character and put them in a place to eliminate those issues so that then they can move in and do something. I don't know. I need to know. Okay, I need to know. So I thought that that was really cool, and I think that it really gives a good setup for this franchise to continue, because we have kind of come to a point where otherwise it feels like the story did reach, at least this arc of the story has reached a conclusion. But I want to know what's going on with the Blight. Is there going to be any more Blight? Is it going to continue to have issues now that it has changed? I want to know, about this mysterious group from across the ocean. I want to know about the Kunari and the things. Oh my gosh, that was so interesting about the gathering storm and or the coming storm and the Kunari, and how it almost seems like, I don't know, because there's also a lot of theory about if the Kunari as a race were created either by the ancient elves or Tevinter. But it almost seems like we at least got confirmation that the fire-breathing Kunari were. Now the question is, does that mean all Kunari were, or did the Kunari create the fire-breathing ones in order to have protectors? We don't really know. We just know that they are intended to fight against this storm which could be coming, and I want to learn more about that. And is that related to this group from across the sea? Because the Kunari came from across the sea, so that is also interesting. So there's just a lot of setup that I think has so much promise to continue this franchise, and so many things that we've learned that just are so fascinating and so interesting, and just I think that it did a really good job developing the world further and developing the story that we have started all the way back at the beginning in Origins. And I also love learning new things about the Blight, even though the Blight freaks me out. Love learning new things about the Blight, and the Grey Wardens. Because again, it's just you've been enmeshed in that since day one with Dragon Age Origins. But yeah, so I do think it has done a really good job of developing the world, and I think we have really good setup for this game series to continue. I just really hope that it does. So my final consensus is I think Veilguard is a really good game. I highly recommend it. I do think that it suffered a little bit just from lack of developing some of those things that Inquisition in particular, but all 3 of the games, in as far as like the romance and character interactions, I think that it needed a bit more of that. And then the open world aspect, I feel like, again, it went backwards a bit with Veilguard. But otherwise, like I said, the plot, great. The characters, really fun, really cool. And I did really definitely enjoy it. Okay. So, now that my little like rant about Veilguard is over, for those of you who either like me are big fans of Dragon Age but want to kind of engage with the world of Thedas on a more holistic level, or for those of you who have never heard of Dragon Age and find the concept of it to be interesting, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start a project. I don't have like a date yet that I plan to do this, where I interact with the Dragon Age franchise as a whole, not just the game. So my plan is to start with the very first piece of Dragon Age media that was released, and then interact with like either read, watch, or play everything in order. So in release order, which means, yes, replaying the game. So this is something that is going to take quite a while because even though I've played the games before, it's been a while since I've played, especially Dragon Age Origins, but all of the first three. And so I would like to go through and just actually replay them, try to complete them, find all the codex entries, because I feel like I'm going to just learn so much more while incorporating these other parts of this franchise. So I'm going to put a screenshot up here. I have made a list of everything that has been released that is still available. So there were like some mobile games, but they weren't really, there was one that wasn't just, it didn't really have any story to it. You just kind of collected different characters and did battles with them. And then there were a couple of games that have since been shut down that were kind of like little those games, they're like free to play games, but you can spend money on them if you want. They have been shut down since. There is one that is still available to download from like where people have kind of made a file of it. I probably am not going to do that one just because I have watched a review on it from Gilder Fallon's channel. If you are a Dragon Age fan and you have not checked her channel out, seriously do. She goes over all kinds of lore and codex entries and fan theories. It's really, really awesome. So I have seen a review of that game, and I'm not going to include that in this list, but all of the major parts of this franchise are here in order of when they were released. And I'm going by original release dates, so some of them were released first in Japan or somewhere else before they were released in America, so we're going by original release dates to keep them in order. So this is my plan. I do already own the first 4 novels and Heart in Hightown and the 2 volumes of World of Thetis, and I have the Blue Wraith comics. I don't have everything that's here, and I do own all 4 games. So I will have to like get some of this going forward, but I'm planning to like just take it pretty slow. But if you would like to kind of go on this journey with me, like I said, I don't have like a start date or anything, but this is something that I'm planning to do, and it is going to be taken like pretty slowly, probably over at least a couple years, a year or two at the shortest amount of time, just because it is going to involve playing these games. And like I said, Inquisition alone, I put in a ton of hours the first time I played it. So, but anyway, this is my plan. This is what I'm going to do. I'm very, very excited to do it. I just feel like because of how much love I have for Dragon Age, I'm doing myself a bit of a disservice not engaging with all of the official media for it, because I want to know all the stories and I want to learn everything I can about this world and these characters. And so this is what I personally am planning to do. Is it a bit ambitious? Yes. Yes, it is. And I have other things I want to read and play and watch as well. So like I said, this is not just going to be me marathoning this by any means. But I am planning to do this. I am really excited about it. So if you would like to do it for yourself, take this list and go through this franchise either for a second time or for the first time ever, highly recommend. Even if you just play the games, still highly recommend. I think that you can get plenty from the games alone, and they're incredible. They're so much fun. Especially if you like fantasy, a little bit dark, and you like to have a character that you get to create and develop, and yeah, it's fun. It's really fun. So anyway, that is, I guess, my first Dragon Age video on this channel. I'm sorry if it was really rambly and like kind of incoherent at times. I really like talking about things that I love, but I kind of do struggle with doing it on, like, doing reviews on videos, because there's no one like engaging back and asking questions, and it's something that I just need to get used to. It's just something that I'm not used to doing. So it is something I want to do more of and get better at, kind of refine my ability to to discuss something, A, without spoiling it, and B, with an audience who is not sitting directly in front of me and talking back to me. So yeah, it is something I'm going to hopefully improve on as I go forward. But I hope that this was interesting. I hope that maybe if you are a Dragon Age fan and you haven't played Veilguard yet, maybe this gave you some motivation to pick it up, gave you some things to expect. If you are not a Dragon Age fan, maybe it made you a little intrigued and you want to check it out. And if you have played Veilguard, I would like to know if you agree with me in the comments, like what you thought of it. Just again, please keep everything spoiler free in the comments. But yeah, if you are a Dragon Age fan, I'd like to know your thoughts on the franchise. This is one of my favorite things to talk about with people. So like, please, I don't have a lot of Dragon Age people in my personal life. So like, seriously, talk to me down there. It would make me very happy. And let me know what you thought of Veilguard, what you think about Dragon Age as a whole. Just like I said, please keep stuff spoiler free. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Oh, if you would like to leave an emoji. Phew. Oh, I know. St. Patrick's Day is on Monday, so why don't we do like a little shamrock? You can put a little shamrock, 4-leaf clover, emoji down there if you want to leave it with your comment, or if you just want to let me know you were here but you don't have anything else to say. I would love for you to pop some little St. Patrick's Day emojis down there. But yeah, so again, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you're having a wonderful day or a wonderful night wherever you are, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!
Look! You ready? 1, 2, 3! Yay! Go Zella!
Yay! Bring him back!
Yay! It's fine. Good girl! No! Zella! This isn't fair! I only have one hand. Ha!
Come here. Okay, Grogu, you want it? You want it? I don't want to wear her out. You know, like running so much at once. It's not like walk.
She stops when she's tired. She'll just refuse to go get him. Good job! Yay!